Hi, I am doing my first quarantine cooking video, and today I am making a crock pot pot roast. I know there are hundreds of ways to cook pot roast. Well, this is the way that I like to cook pot roast. It's one way that I have found that tastes good to me. I'm not very successful at cooking pot roast on a pot or in the oven. I've tried that, it doesn't work for me. I can put it in a crock pot and let it go for 8 hours and it's done and it's good and it's yummy and it's tender. So this is what we're doing. So let me show you how I cook my pot roast. The first thing that I do is I set my stove to about, we're gonna sear the meat by the way. And I'm gonna set my oven, my stove temperature to about medium high and get it nice and hot. And I coat my pan with some olive oil, about 2 or 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And I'm gonna get that good and hot. And then I'm gonna put my pot roast in. So while that's getting warm, I'm going to salt and pepper my roast. I use kosher salt, about a teaspoon or so of kosher salt. Rub that on the roast, and then I'm going to use about a teaspoon of pepper. Get it on here. I like to sear my pot roast because it renders the fat and gives it a little bit of texture. So I'm gonna rub this in. This is the way I do mine. Rub that in, turn it over. Use my other hand. I'm gonna salt the other side. Now, don't be afraid of salt. I heard that one time, Robert Irvine said that one time on Restaurant Impossible. He said, don't be afraid of salt. Salt adds flavor. Don't be afraid of salt. You want your food to have flavor. I'm gonna put some more pepper on this side over here. By the way, I forgot to mention that I had patted my pot roast with a paper towel to soak up the moisture. You don't want that moisture on your roast because it will make your oil splatter when you're searing it, and you don't want to steam your roast, you're wanting to sear it. So here I go, and you want to hear it sizzle a little bit. Hear that? That is searing it, and we're gonna sear it for about 3 to 4 minutes on each side. And when it's done searing on this side, you use tongs. You're gonna flip it to the other side and let it sear on the other side for about 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, while this is searing, I'm gonna make my broth. And this is how I make my broth. I take about a cup of beef broth, and I have a cup of dry red wine. You want the red wine to be dry. This is gonna add a lot of flavor. And I have about 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. And I use a packet of Lipton Recipe Secrets onion soup mix. It gives it a lot of flavor. And then I use a can of cream of mushroom soup. And typically I use a whisk to stir that around. But before I do, I'm going to turn my roast because it's ready to go on the other side. Just use your tongs and gently turn it because it's going to splatter a little bit. It's hot. Do you see that? Do you see that nice sear, how it's a little crispy? It's going to give your roast a little texture. It's going to render that fat. And that's what you want when you have a roast. Let that cook for about 3 or 4 minutes. And I'm stirring my broth. Now, some people, when they add cream of mushroom soup, they do that at the end. You can certainly do that at the end if you like. I like to put mine in all at the same time because I want to put my roast all in there and let it go for 8 hours. I don't want to have to come back and do another stir and add more ingredients. I want to put them all in all at the same time. Okay, my broth is ready to go. Now, typically when you're searing a piece of meat, you want to let it sear for about 3 or 4 minutes without checking it. Don't check it. Don't keep going back and checking to see if it's done. You want to just let it go for 3 or 4 minutes. And when you know that 3 or 4 minutes has passed, then it's ready to put it in the pot. Okay. My roast is done searing. Now what I like to do, I like to put the juices right in my crock pot. I like those juices. That juice is flavor. And go ahead and put your roast right down in there. Okay, now I'm going to add my vegetables. The first thing I'm going to do is add my potatoes. Now let me tell you what I do with my potatoes. I quarter them. Don't make them too small. You make them too small, they're going to get done before your roast gets done, and then your potatoes are going to be mushy. So I usually just quarter mine. Typically I use red potatoes. This time I'm using, I hand-picked white potatoes. Red potatoes are kind of hard to come by, good ones anyway, during quarantine. So I'm going to just take my potatoes and I'm going to put them all around on the edges of my roast. Okay, and then I'm going to use carrots, and I usually use baby carrots. You can get fresh carrots and chop them up, but good fresh carrots that you chop up yourself are kind of hard to come by on the grocery store shelf. So I'm using these packaged baby carrots, which are just fine. And then I'm going to use my onions. And now, with the onions, I cut them large. I like them large. This is just a yellow onion, a whole yellow onion. I like them large because if you cut them really small, they're just going to disappear somewhere in your broth. And I like the texture of all the vegetables. Okay, so there's my my roast. I'm going to add my broth that I've mixed up. Just go ahead and pour it right there on the vegetables all the way around. This is going to cook for 8 hours. Don't lift the lid. I'm going to cook it on low for 8 hours. And all this is going to braise the roast in your crock pot. I like to add a little bit more kosher salt to my vegetables. Again, don't be afraid of salt unless you're on a low salt diet. If you're on a low salt diet, you gotta follow your doctor's orders. But if you want full flavor, then don't be afraid of using that salt. And don't be afraid of using the pepper. Down here in Texas, we like pepper, so go ahead and put the pepper on there because I like to be able to taste a little bit of black pepper when I eat my food. I want to be able to taste some of the black pepper without it being spicy. This is going to be so good. Okay, that's it. I'm going to set the crock pot to low. Let that go for 8 hours. It's going to be delicious. Thank you for watching.